Good morning. Welcome to this AIRMIC fastTrack webinar. My name is Julia Graham. I'm the Deputy CEO at AIRMIC and head up the technical team. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to introduce you to this webinar, which focuses on future-proofing your career. Such a hot topic at the moment, particularly as we see the career of the risk professional taking some really interesting and challenging directions during and hopefully after the current pandemic. So without further ado, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction of our speaker today, who's going to deliver the majority of this webinar, and that is Iram Yerdelin, who is the director at Willis Towers Watson. But before I introduce Iram, I just want to turn to a couple of slides. First of all, to make sure that if you do want to ask questions, and this is your webinar, so please do take the opportunity, you can ask questions by going to the relevant panel in the GoToWebinar console. If for any reason the console isn't visible, just click the orange arrow to expand it and away you go. Today we'll pick up questions as they come, if they're at an appropriate time in Iram's presentation, or if it seems more appropriate to do so, we'll store those away and we'll make sure that they're answered towards the end of the webinar. So off we go. I've got a couple of introductory slides that I want to start off with. Probably one of the best hidden and kept secrets in the AIRMIC technical library, but I'd really like people on the webinar today to go and take a look at this. This is the AIRMIC competency framework for risk management professionals. We published this at the fastTrack forum in March of this year, and this is the first time that AIRMIC has had a competency framework for our members, and we drafted this from scratch, really building on what we felt the competency framework should look like. If we can just go back, thank you very much indeed. So if we can go back to the competency framework slide, please, that would be fantastic. And I want to draw to your attention that it's got four components, and they're all of equal importance. There are some core principles at the center of the rondelle. These are things that have to apply to all risk professionals, regardless of who you are and where you are in your career. Then around that, some risk management attainment and development objectives, business awareness, which is incredibly important, and behaviors and mindsets. Now, the behaviors and mindsets are there as enablers to ensure that you've got the skills to be able to apply the other three components of this framework. Now, it probably won't come as a great surprise to you to know that even though this is probably only now just about 6 months old, we think it's due for a bit of a reboot. And my colleague Adam Ireland, who heads up our learning and development programs, will be working on this in the new year. So watch this space. But please, in the meantime, do go and take a look, because it drives many of the learning and development opportunities that AIRMIC has and plan to provide. So moving on, in August this year, we ran a survey of AIRMIC members, and we looked at how well the profession had performed in the pandemic, and particularly in terms of resilience. And what were the most valued principles of resilience during the pandemic? And you can see here some of the areas that came out as incredibly important. Effective communication topped the poll. Effective leadership came very, very closely after it, followed by reliable and timely information. What was very interesting to us at AIRMIC when we looked at these results is that we've trawled far and wide as to what other surveys and other highly respected reports have said about what worked well in the pandemic. And the responses given by our members, which were very positive in terms of the role of the profession, were very, very similar indeed to the results that you fed back to us. So these have been benchmarked against other global surveys, and I think they're excellent indicators of where our profession needs to invest its future, certainly in 2021 and beyond, in terms of learning and development. So a few clues there to some of the issues that we might cover as we go through our presentation today. and maybe some ideas for you to pose questions around as we make that journey. Last but not least, do go and have a look at the report from which this chart was taken. You'll find that on the ERMIC website, and it's the pandemic report that was issued to coincide with ERMIC Fest earlier this year. So, what are our learning objectives from today? Well, after today, we're hoping you will better understand how people process change, develop a positive outlook of turning challenges into opportunities, adopt a helpful mindset for career navigation, which is what we were focusing on just now, gain exposure and visibility outside the typical working environment. The whole issue of collaboration and cooperation has never been more important. Understand how your intrinsic motivations are expressed through behaviour, and take away practical tips to build your own resilience and change management. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Iram, who's going to share a little bit about herself, and is going to take us through the rest of the presentation. Iram, over to you.
Thank you, Julia. Good morning, everybody. Nice to be coming back to ERMIC webinars on a virtual basis. Some of you may have seen me in the March fastTrack when I was also working alongside Julia. Actually, I have it here, working on this Future of the Profession document, which was a great study. And today we will be hopefully tying it all in nicely for you to understand a little bit of how to navigate the choppy waters. And before I start, let me give you a little bit of a background of who I am. So I've been in the industry now over 14 years, and the last 8 of it is in Willis Towers Watson. Before then, I was working for Marsh, and I moved to the UK almost now 11.5 years ago. So during my career, I've held senior roles placing wholesale business into the London market for large and complex risk, producing, broking reinsurance, managing team of brokers, key client relationships. So over these years, I had to really navigate my career from all sorts of different point of view. So today I have the pleasure of sharing my own experiences, but not only that, I lead the Gender Equity Network in the UK for Willis Towers Watson. So we spend a lot of time in coaching, mentoring, and talking to the young talent, attracting them into our organization in a far more open-minded manner, just beyond the HR and recruitment rules. So I'm very passionate about self-development, and I always want to grow myself, say also others around me, so that we have an amazing, diverse talent coming into the play to give the best experience to our clients. So hopefully today's session will give you some practical tips as well as some different point of view. So let me start with this slide. So basically it's white water rafting, isn't it? Has anyone actually did it in your personal life for fun? I've done it once and it was terrifying. As you can see, this quote on the screen talks a lot about seeking the rapid, not calm of the lake, and then take the calm to reflect and prepare for the rapid. I think COVID-19 gave us that. So we had a moment of calm to reflect and prepare for the new normal, and therefore I really like to show you my perspective about whitewater rafting. So moving from that, I think maybe one thing we can do is what really change is, and let's start by looking at how change works. So first, we think it's a straightforward line. So it's a matter of going from one place to another, just like moving from position A to position B on a straight line. But actually, it is not like that. Instead, it is not a straight line. And sorry, I've got something on my screen. Yeah. So it is actually quite complicated, and it's easy to imagine change as a process that we have to go through, and it happens on a uniform fashion. But that's in the most cases wishful thinking. And change has an adjustment period, which changes because of emotions, because of experiences, because of individuals, and it is uncomfortable. And changing from one state to the next actually upsets control that we think we do have, and therefore it has a rippling effect and we won't let it go. And change occurs as a process, not as an event. Let's think about organizational change. Of course, things like COVID, it happens very suddenly, but actually if we think about change, it doesn't happen that instant. So individuals don't change because simply they had a training course or they received an email overnight or they did a session like this. So we experience change and we move from what we had known and done before through a transition to arrive at a new desired way of behaving. And let's look at now the change curve. So we all experience things when we face with sudden change. So more dramatic things, more impactful and difficult things like, for instance, COVID-19, or suddenly one day you wake up and your company is about to merge with another big firm. And we all worry about these things. So whether it's a good change or a not so good change, it is helpful if we recognize what we may be experiencing and where are currently dealing with it all. So Elizabeth Kahler-Ross identified 5 stages that every individual experiences when we face with significant change. And actually, if we review these phases, as you can see, it's denial, it's anger, it's depression, it's bargaining, and then acceptance. So the acceptance phase is very important because the moment we accept and let go, actually things become a new thing, so new beginnings. And let me explain a little bit more. So productivity goes down as people work through the stages of change. According to the author, these stages can occur in a random order, not necessarily linear either. So a person cannot fully move forward to the next step until that person has resolved the current stage in the process. So in large-scale efforts, it is not uncommon for people to repeat the entire cycle in multiple times. And it is important, therefore, for us to be aware and acknowledge the emotions that would come along as we navigate during the change process. And once we were aware of the emotions, how we can manage them effectively. And I think this is something that I tend to do, that how I can effectively manage some of the negative emotions that could be experienced in some of these phases. So then the moment I acknowledge that I'm going into a negative cycle, then I just snap and I say, okay, you know this is a cycle and you know you're gonna find your next emotional phase and find a new beginning. So it is the way how I transition into a change myself. So then if we look at the actual model and some facts, in the next diagram, you will see that actually there's a model here. So if we move on to the model, so basically we know the importance of preparing ourselves both physically and mentally for the changing environment. And it is still a roller coaster that we experience. So this work on transition explore our responses that are a natural part of the change process. Again, people are often quite uncomfortable with change for all sorts of reasons, but this can lead them into resist it and oppose it. And also, transitions and disruption involve challenge that people to concentrate today and to the moment, maybe sometimes successfully and maybe not so successfully. So seeing life changes as being a changing season can really help. And also, many people fail to realize that every transition begins with an ending. So actually, and endings are always sad and it feels like an unfinished business. But actually developing supportive relationships with the future gives us a well-being and also the joy of the new beginnings. So I ask again, is there a difference between changes and transitions? I leave you to think about it for a moment. And to be honest, change is situational, change is physical, but transition is psychological. So if you think about it that way, it's not the events outside that make the transition. It's the inner reorientation and meaning and redefinition we incorporate those changes ourselves. So transitions are times of crossing or traveling from something old and familiar to something new and unfamiliar. And most transitions are small and by almost unnoticed. However, they involve major disruptions in routine and forces us to re-examine our values and lifestyle. Again, COVID-19 has been an amazing learning for all of us in terms of our values, back to basics, having the gratitude and change in our lifestyle. So if I now move to a little bit more around the attitudes and approaches to change. So again, another way of thinking about our mindset and appreciating the responsibility we take around change is quite important. So there are two factors, effectiveness and responsibility. And now you're going to see on the screen that there is the victim and the chooser psychology. So all these moods, poor me, blaming others, players, being a pioneer and creator, these are all within us. And sometimes we choose to show which one we would like to use during this change. And I think I would like to focus on the choosers because being a victim is actually very easy. But on the choosers, you can see the last three have all one thing in common. So they choose to be like that and they choose their approach and see the change in terms of what possibilities it may bring and take full responsibility for where they are. And therefore, loser and victim find excuses, but winners and choosers find opportunities. And I think this leads us very nicely into some further thinking around transforming victim attitude and mindset into choosing one. So acknowledge yourself how you're feeling. Consider the pros and cons of the change and try to say yes most of the time. So one way for us to adopt a growth mindset would be to see ourselves as choosers rather than victims, to be proactive in leading ourselves to not to just cope with changes, but to see ourselves in control of the finding that resources to learn new skills, embrace challenges, put in the efforts that would lead to mastery, and seek feedback and take feedback as gifts. Don't be afraid to learn from setbacks. And also this is acknowledged to understand that how you're feeling. If you're feeling like a victim, just name it and gain that awareness as an important first step in challenging the assumptions you're thinking. So again, analyze the cost and benefit that you're currently getting from being a victim or a chooser. And while identifying the downside, maybe explore what benefits you may get from adopting a chooser mindset. And again, finally, proactively seek opportunities to participate, contribute, and add value to your team, to your day-to-day, and to other people around you. So, for instance, another example, like Julia and I, we worked together formally to come up with a report, but I never stopped thinking about how can I add value to this fast-track community, because I always think there's so much to learn from each other. And again, this helps us to understand how much control we have on our own destiny. And again, the mindsets. So why rubber bands? Again, I'm asking a very simple question. How people are like rubber bands? So actually, if we think about it, well, obviously we are all in different shapes and sizes. We are all in different colors. We bounce back. We stretch ourselves sometimes too thin and then we snap. We all have different skills and our skills have different uses. And together we can do more. So for me, each morning when I wake up, it's all about my mindset. Do I feel positive today? Do I feel negative? And if I feel negative, why? Without too much over-analyzing, knowing that I'm a rubber band and I can just bounce back and be my usual joyful self. And I think the word mindset means set of assumptions, methods, held by one or more people or groups that is so established that it creates a powerful incentive within these people or groups to continue, adopt, or accept some behaviors, choices, or tools. So again, you can create your own mindset, but try to spread the light around your team, around your family, around your people that you have in your bubble. So one of the leading thought leaders in mindset, and basically this person talks a lot about how it impacts our performance, is Carol Dweck. And she's a psychology professor in Stanford University. So she talks a lot about two distinct mindsets known as fixed and growth mindset, and how each differs from one another and how it can make impact to the areas of our lives, such as developing our minds, becoming more resilient to challenges. And her theory is that we have a choice in how we respond to change, and that we can open our minds and strive toward a growth mindset, even if our natural tendency to be more towards fixed mindset. So again, I leave you to digest this slide a little bit, because it obviously spans across skills, challenges, efforts, feedback, setbacks, and so on. And again, maybe a couple of areas to highlight. When you think of skills, a fixed mindset views the skills are set without need to change. You know, these are my skills and I am good at these things. But like Julia said, our time is changing so fast and the change is so rapid that we almost have to shift from the fixed mindset and into a growth mindset. Maybe we think, oh, we've learned what we need to know to be effective at our job. But with the growth mindset, we will see there's always room to improve, and that results can happen from the hard work. If we look at maybe about the feedback, so we dread going into the year-end reviews. Oh my God, like my boss is going to give me feedback. But actually, maybe we can have a bit of a defensive feeling when we receive a feedback. But actually, with the growth mindset, people are adopting into receiving feedback as a gift. And in fact, it's very useful and very welcomed to understand the areas of improvement that you need, and especially getting a feedback from different stakeholders in your life, whether it's your family, whether it's your colleague, whether it's your mentor, senior manager, they will all give you a different feedback. So I think with this in mind, maybe we can move into a little bit of understanding how to take control of the successes with this fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So of course, we all are responsible of our self-development, and we can always control some form of behavioral examples. So if I talk about behavioral examples, and there are some animations in this slide, so it should come up in a second. So learning from experience, obviously, it takes time to critically reflect on the past failures and lessons learned. But actually, learning from experience is the one best form of learning. And then making room for the new, demonstrate the willingness to give up skills, perspectives, and ideas that are no longer relevant, and maybe learn new ones, and then move on to your next career path. Being self-aware, it recognizes and understands that what are our strengths, development areas, and learning styles. So being self-aware gets you a long way. So I kind of put there a couple of development tips or potential derailers. So if I take making room for the new as an example, I would say the beginner's mindset is amazing. If you think you're a child like a sponge and you learn every day and you allow yourself time to be awkward at the beginning, and look at it as a natural path that beginnings are always difficult, but once you crack it down, then you will absolutely get a very good feeling about this new thing. But in the potential derailers, I think for the same, we shy away from opportunities sometimes, to learn some additional skills. And in that regard, we have to be comfortable with sitting in the uncomfortable. So stepping outside of area of comfort and the new ways of doing our work may make us feel uncomfortable. That is the derailer that we should be aware and basically manage our way forward accordingly. And obviously it goes hand in hand with being self-aware and learning from the experience. And now if we look at the a technique when we are exploring resistance, and this is called circle of control. Again, remind yourself to focus on what you can control and what you need to let go of. So if we look at it, basically, this is another way of keeping your mindset positive, to reflect on what you can actually do. And the circle of control is one way of reminding that to yourself in times of uncertainty, such as when the lockdown is going to finish, when am I going to do over Christmas? So the idea is to focus on what you can directly control or have influence over, not on those things completely out of our hands. So again, maybe I'll give an example from myself. As we go through the stages of integration with Aon, and we are still waiting the news for the regulatory approval, there are certain things that will fall out of my control. Sorry, and this is like the new organizational structure, how it's developed, how the selection process will work. What am I going to do? Which team I'm going to sit into? So again, like, I can choose to focus on areas where I have the control, such as networking, building my relationship with some colleagues, delivering value to my team on a day-to-day basis, bringing the best client service experience, and again, delivering sessions like this to be helpful to the wider community in insurance industry. So I'm waiting for the new developments to take shape, but at the same time, I am not worried about the things out of my control regarding of economy, regarding of COVID, regarding of the new merger, and it is a choice. So maybe if I now look at a little bit more around changing the workforce expectations in light of COVID-19. So we know what employees want. They want less hierarchy, a voice, learn and grow, company culture to be doing the right thing, and to be authentic so that we have our whole self coming into work. And we know what new competencies being developed in the COVID area. So definitely critical thinking, consolidating the inputs and data to create original thought. So many people come up with amazing ideas during the lockdown, and it made teams bonded even more than when they were in the office environment. So solution building, I think team working and design thinking became very important, because without the teamwork, none of the work could be done in a virtual environment. Again, influencing skills, like how can we attract talent if we are not going to meet people, going to the networking event or career fairs and so on. So we had to present our companies in the market like a YouTube influencer or an Instagram influencer. So suddenly we start talking more about what is the values, what is the deep down joy that we have in our firms. And of course, we all like to give back to the world, because being selfish is not going to bring us anywhere. So again, if we look at future of the workplaces, we all want them to be purposeful, fun, exciting, and embracing the new diverse talent pool. And let me explain a little bit more here. So to recruit the true talent, we work with large organizations that they are very good at knowing their organization's purpose, articulating their employee brand, and creating an employee experience that outperforms their peers by 3 times. And in the next 10 years' time, we know 85% of the jobs won't exist. So there is absolute shift in the focus to skills. And it is critical breaking down job roles into skills. And one of the key competency skills that we are talking as the new competencies are critical thinking. And this critical thinking I've just mentioned is just so important for bringing up the right outputs in time of uncertainty. So maybe we can try to make our industry a little bit more purposeful and fun and all that, but actually we work for insurance. So some people may say, oh, it is such a boring thing we do from daylight to nightlight, and we spend our time over it. So let's look at now the myths and the truths. Maybe that will give us a little bit more resiliency and the fact of matter of the truth about the resilience. So before I reveal the questions, let me explain what is the dictionary definition of resilience. So it is an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change, to bounce back after being subjected to an adversity or stress, the ability of substance or object to spring back into shape. So in essence, resilience is our ability to recover from setbacks and to embrace change and soften rather than fighting in the face of hardship. So let's now reveal which of the following is a myth. So I'll just let you read it for a moment. So I think you all think like me. Oh, they all sound a bit similar. Yes, so they are all myths, and it is correct. So obviously, I mean, I can just cover maybe two for the sake of our timing ahead. So resilient people go it alone. There's a reason why Connect More is a central resilience building concept. It's because every theory of well-being includes high-quality relationships. People who have positive relationships have greater cognitive functioning and are more creative and are more engaged at work and therefore more resilient. So actually, it's a myth. Again, another one, resilient people power through the stress and illness. Definitely a myth. Some people struggle with slowing down, and I was one of them. And value the ability to power through any illness or injury is not actually giving you a medal or anything. And having an adequate chance to recover is actually very important, preventing burnout and staying resilient. So the moment you feel your workload is too much because you work long hours and everything, definitely put a stopper on it, because we are all now tend to work far too long than what we would normally do, because there is lack of interaction with people, there's lack of commute, lack of networking, and so on. So it is very important to recover, have me time to just clear our mind. And lastly, now we can move on to the practical tips. And building your resilience requires some really practical work. And again, these are maybe common sense, and you may heard about them before, but actually managing your stress, taking action to keep stress under control, and in particular, working in a way that allows you to concentrate on your priorities first without the distraction of fighting the fires. And taking care of yourself. This is very, very important because, as I say, it may look different for different people depending on what activities allow you to decompress the most, whether it's listening music, whether it's going for a run or playing with your children. You know, you choose how to take care of your me time. And making connections with others. Again, it's very, very important to keep in touch and just say hi to your colleagues, even if you haven't spoken to them for the last 4 months. So I think maybe if we dwell a little bit more into each section, practicing mindfulness. And you have heard this everywhere, like everybody talks about this. And again, it is an era of so many things that can compete for our attention, the ability to maintain focus, concentration is very, very difficult and important for technical and management skills. The good news is we can train our brains to focus better by incorporating mindfulness into our day. And again, you don't have to be a monk sitting at the top of the mountain, or you don't need to wear an orange robe to do mindfulness. It's about focus and awareness. Focus is the ability to concentrate on what you're doing in the moment. And while awareness is the ability to recognize and release unnecessary distractions when they arise. And mindfulness in action is a great alternative to what many of us do automatically, which is multitasking. So I used to be a person proud of being a multitasker, but eventually I realized when I multitask, actually I rip off whatever I do alongside the main thing I'm doing. So it's actually a shame that we try to do so many things in one go, but we never actually put our focus 100% to that one thing. And if we do the opposite, if we focus on one thing properly and then move on to the other thing, we always get the best results. Mindful working means applying focus and awareness, and practicing mindfulness can increase effectiveness, decrease mistakes, and even enhance creativity. And I can totally say from a personal perspective, I've only started practicing it maybe for over 10 months, and I use Headspace app, which is so easy and straightforward, and you just have to repeat, because without repetition and practice, it won't work. If I move to me time, and again, me time, everyone knows, healthy diet, exercising, adequate sleep, and making activities you enjoy. But again, important factor in managing stress is allowing yourself time to disconnect outside of work. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, workers around the world spend 34 to 48 hours at work each week on average, and many engage in work and work-related activities after business hours. And McKinsey suggests that always-on multitasking work environments are actually killing productivity, creativity, and making us unhappy. Always-on is a dangerous and unproductive mindset because it fails to take recovery time into account. Even the athletes on their best teams require time to rest and recover. So be intentional about when you need to engage in the office or digitally, and when you need to be intentionally and explicit about not to engage, and have your me time and have your family time. Creating time for yourself to continue to do the things you enjoy will contribute to your overall sense of balance and happiness. Make connections with others. As we just said, I'm here to make connection with you, and I hope to hear sincerely from you at the end of this session about how you have been coping in the last 7, 8, 10 months. Because we are not alone. Our loved ones and friends are all around us, and a very special time of the year is coming to stay connected, and we don't know whether we will even be able to. And sharing concerns with the family or people around you at work actually may help you to gain some perspective that you may not have considered. You may also have trusted colleagues, neighbors who are experiencing similar challenges to you. So you can often empathize fully with your situation. They can empathize with your situation. And sometimes the best people to vent to are sometimes they're not at your work environment, or they are in a different industry, so that you suddenly realize that it's not you and your industry going through the same issues. We should also be aware that some challenges are harder to deal with than others. For instance, having actually a person with COVID-19 in your household. And there is no shame in reaching out for help, or saying things that you can't cope anymore, or which can often provide a new level of support that friends, colleagues, and loved ones may not be in a position to offer, but they may actually recommend you to an association, to another help body that you can go and speak with other people. As I said, we are never alone. And in summary, I would like to finish with a quote again from Dr. Carol Dweck of Stanford University. To have a positive impact, you need to be in a positive mindset. And maybe I'll pass Julia to also share a couple of her views, because I whizzed through some of these and I hope you enjoyed listening about the change and resilience and how we can shift our mindset. And Julia, over to you for last remarks.
Okay, Iran, thank you very much. A fascinating insight. I've got a couple of questions actually before I pass over to a few comments where you and I can have a little chat about. So, what are some of the things that people can do about this? And that is, you mentioned when you had the lovely rubber band slide up, and I think it was around about then. One of the questions is that you said keep hold of things that matter and let other things go. So focusing on what matters is something we've had some very strong messages on in terms of organisations and individuals who've responded particularly well in the last few months of the pandemic. But letting go is much easier to say than do. Do you have any experiences of talking with people about how do you prioritize and how do you let go, is the question that we've got.
Yes, I think I've learned a lot through our inclusion network relationships, because since the beginning of COVID, we ran regular sessions where colleagues came on, and then there were other network sessions throughout the whole period where people shared their vulnerabilities and how they can actually cope with being burned out. So first and foremost, I don't think the employers will like it, but family first and your loved ones first, and your safety and your health is first. And then you have to have the whole security in yourself to be able to get back into the office environment digitally and perform at your best. Because we all know, if your health is not sorted, if your kids are screaming, if your husband is unhappy, or if your family is not there when you need them, then you can't concentrate at work. And you cannot bring your whole self to work because your mind is elsewhere. So this is the broader, I think, macro perspective. And micro perspective, how to prioritize work, in my opinion, is managing through the deadlines and timelines. So again, saying no to some of the projects, some of the clients, some of the underwriters or brokers, learning how to say no in a way that your message actually is received without any defense is the important point here. And then you can prioritize based on your delivery of the day-to-day tasks.
I think that's a great answer, actually, putting personal life first. If you're unhappy personally, I think it's very difficult to give your full potential commercially. The other thing I might suggest, and it probably won't be the only time I mention this today, but we have a really strong mentoring program offered by ERMIC. And I think considering coming on to mentoring is a really good thing to do, because I think talking to a mentor and sharing these issues with somebody who's not your line manager is actually a really good thing to do. And I think one of the things that the mentoring program does very skillfully. So for those of you listening in today, if you haven't thought about joining the mentoring program, it's available as a member benefit. It doesn't cost to join this. We've got a great selection of people who've lined themselves up to be mentors. So sign up to the program, arrange your mentor, and use your mentor to sound out some of these questions too as well. The whole reason that people offer themselves up to take part in the program as mentors is that they have some life experiences to share. So do take the opportunity of doing that. Is it easy to let anything go? Well, you shouldn't be asking me. I find it really difficult to let anything go, to be honest. It is really tough. But I think letting go is probably easier if you understand what you're being asked to do and you understand it really well. Because having counter discussions is much easier if you're well informed and prepared. So never just say no, but say, you know, great question. I'm going to think about this to myself or to whoever has asked you to do something, and then go away and sort through what priorities you've got and see whether or not you can do it. Don't give a snap answer about letting things go. Think about it. Another question I've got here is that there's a lot of material that you've gone through today, Iram. Is there anything in particular that you'd say, look, if you did some learning objectives at the beginning about what people should take away from today, but if I pin down, and I've got a member here who said, okay, top 3 takeaways, what are the things I should go away from this session today and do to make my life personally and professionally different? Have you got a top 3?
Yeah, I can make a top 3. I love all of those points, but I would say probably, first of all, why we can come to these sort of sessions. We want to make a difference in our lives, clearly, and we want to grow, we want to learn, and personal development is important. So let's say I'm a person who comes to these sort of sessions. I always want to walk out of a session like this with a different thinking. So if, let's say, the rubber band analogy was quite nice, because we are all different and we all think different, so you can only take away something which wasn't in you half an hour before. So try to just take one thing which you heard today for the first time and incorporated it into your life. I think that's a very simple takeaway, because we all learn new things each day. And then probably the other thing is maybe look at your career narrative through the resilient path, and think about your career path that you have to be resilient all along, and figure out what is your why, what is your purpose, what is your value, what is your strength, and how do you make impact. So I think that is quite important to create that career resiliency. And last but not least, definitely me time, because we all easily disregard me time and we just juggle along, push it, and then we break. So for me, that is very important to recover.
I think that's excellent advice. I've got a comment rather than a question here, and I sort of looked at this comment coming through, and I thought, well, that's a strange comment for somebody for making a comment here. But they said one of the takeaways is sit down and write your CV, and I thought, well, that's a bit odd. We're not encouraging people to move jobs, but I think the point that's being made, and I've made this myself a few times in my past different commercial lives, is that writing a CV can be for yourself, because if you do it well and you use some of the great templates that are out there on the web, it makes you focus on what you're good at and what you've achieved and what you might have to offer. And that can become your personal mandate for managing yourself. It doesn't only mean that it's for applying for another job. I mean, do you have a view on that? Do you think that's a good thing to do? I
completely agree. And I'm a person who spent 7 years in one firm and 8 years in another firm. So I really didn't move around too much. But I have an up-to-date CV, and I look at my roles, responsibilities inside a firm every 2 years. So I kind of refresh my CV every 2 years to actually look back and see how my previous roles, what I have done before, alludes into the next role and the next role. So almost preempting using my past, preempting the future. So that's why CV is very important.
Yeah, thank you. And going back to the mentoring program, just to say, we've got 26 mentors lined up to help people. So if you get your request in fast, you might be able to snap up one of those 26. But we've been really thrilled with the way the mentoring program has gone. And in fact, I've talked to one of my mentees about developing a CV for the very reason that one of our colleagues posed the issue now. And we talked through the fact that maybe drafting a CV like that is a really good exercise for personal development to do. Very challenging. And I bet that you write that and you will change something in the way that you currently work or format your aspirations. Is particularly useful when it comes up to discuss performance review in the future, because it gives you a platform to do that about what you enjoy and what works for you. Now, this last slide, we sort of were a bit cheeky in here, Iram, because I was going to put in all the things that we saw from the survey. You showed the Future of the Profession report that we drafted with Willis and published at the fastTrack Forum in March. And the survey that we undertook of our members later in the year, the Megatrend survey, which is on the website, and the pandemic survey. We've been doing a lot of surveys. I'm sorry for that, guys, but we do need to know what you think. And so quality risk intelligence and data is no longer something that's nice to have. But based on what you've been saying today, Iram, the other sort of nice to haves and must haves that came out of those surveys, I'll give away the top two, because the first one is develop your leadership skills. And there are plenty of things in the AMIC Academy and other programs that we offer to do that. There's a reason why the Business Excellence program this year, we were overwhelmed with people who want to go on that, and it was fully subscribed in an incredibly short space of time, because that's all about building your leadership skills into other areas with your peers. And data was number 2. So the one I put up on the screen cheekily is not even number 1. But the other ones is the people skills, and there were 3 areas that people came up with. One was developing a personal awareness of yourself, which you've been talking about today, learning to see yourself as other people see you, which is a great skill, and again, probably something that could be very valuable talking through to a mentor. The other was understanding connected risk. We could use your rubber band slide for that, because the world is incredibly and increasingly connected, and it's hard to do. I'm not going to say it's easy, but importantly, engaging with the business. So based on what you've been talking about today, are there particular takeaways that will help somebody come across well when they're talking to their peers, or perhaps if they get the chance, to their C-suite or senior managers within their organization? Is there any advice that you can give based on what you've said today that would help people to be able to develop the ability to do that?
Yes, of course. I would say at the moment, everybody is almost craving to hear from each other. So mentoring schemes are fantastic. You can formalize your relationship even as a reverse mentor to a senior leader. And I always say, if you're aspiring to become a manager, to become a head of a business in your company, you need to spend time with people who are actually currently performing that task. Or maybe you can move from underwriting to broking, claims to legal. No matter what your aspirations are, you have to form a relationship and some form of, whether it's a peer mentoring, whether it's straightforward mentoring or reverse mentoring, you have to have that connection. And in this digital world, it is very difficult to make yourself in front of people. So the only thing I would say here is just be honest and upfront and reach out to these people and say why you would like to have a chat. Make it formal or informal, but put yourself out there, because if we don't put ourselves out there, we are invisible in the digital world. Yeah. So therefore, it's very important to keep strong networking, use LinkedIn, using the connections and events like this, reaching out to people in the participants, because ERMIC is very good at coming up with participant names so that people can always mingle and talk to each other. So I seek those sort of informal networking digital platforms as well to connect with different people.
Iram, you use the expression reverse mentoring, and I'm going to ask you, first of all, very quickly what you mean by that, but secondly, do you ever come across examples of people who do reverse mentoring? It always sounds a really tough call to me.
Yes, we just launched in our firm a formal reverse mentoring scheme, and in fact, it is driven out of the latest issues around Black Lives Matter and people who are willing to learn more into it and understand what are the concerns of the new talent coming from a not privileged background or coming from a completely different family background. Because in insurance, as we know, CII did a very good study about it. I think the country average is 84% white, whereas insurance industry is 6% more. So it's like 90% white people in our industry. So reverse mentoring is basically people at a young age from completely different backgrounds to the usual leadership in our insurance industry to go and speak with them, share their worries, share their aspirations, share their thinking about the world, life, our industry, and so on. And then basically create a bit of a dialogue which challenges both sides. Because of course those guys are or guys and girls are coming from a different background, and the leadership can also teach them. So it's like both ways stream.
I think you raise a good point, because the diversity and inclusion breakfast that we ran at ERMIC Fest in September was most definitely not an act of tokenism. It was giving people, sharing, if you like, an insight into people's different journeys from different backgrounds. And we're going to put that panel on the spot again, by the way, in 2021. They've all volunteered, with exception, to come back and run another panel that says, so what? What happened? Make a difference, which I think is a great challenge to take up. And I'm sort of thinking now, you've got my brain working here, because I think everyone on that panel would be a great mentor, actually. So if any of them are on this, keep your heads down, guys, because we might be heading your way. So we're coming now to a conclusion of our webinar today. We've just got a couple of minutes left. And I think the point I would like to make, I think, to close, Iram, is that many of the things that you've been talking about today are not short term. They're about investing in yourself. So it is worth taking the time, because you are the biggest investment that you're ever likely to make. It's not your house, it's not your partnership, it's about you. And if you don't invest in yourself, then and put your own investment needs to mind, I guess it's very difficult to expect other people to do that too. So is there any sort of final parting word that you would like to share with us, Iram, before we bring today to a close?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity, Julia. I always enjoy coming into AMIC forums and being part of this amazing community. Lastly, I would say the title of this session was Future-Proofing Your Career. And for me, one secret key into it is being yourself. And if I wasn't an authentic individual showing up as who I am at work for the last 14 years, I wouldn't be speaking with you today. So please remember that, be authentic and be yourself.
And I think, Iram, you are a classic example of that. Always the same, always amazingly full of enthusiasm and willing to share, and a great role model, actually, for any of us who, at whatever stage we're at in our career, who have been here today. So on that point, we are 1 minute away from our time. So we're going to finish on time, and I'd just like to extend a big thank you to you, Iram, for being with us today, for taking the time and trouble to prepare a lovely presentation, for answering the questions and the comments that we fired at you. Thank you for doing that. And a final reminder from me, go and look up the reports on the AMIC website, Competency Framework Survey, Future of the Profession and the Pandemic. It's full of information. There she goes. I told you.
There you go. I like hard copies.
Yeah, me too. You know, do go and look them up, and do remember the mentoring program. You know, inundate us with inquiries and we'll be very happy. So on that count, we're finished for today. Iram, thank you again, and everyone have a great day and a great week, and take care.
Bye everyone. Thank you.